friends. I am here with my colleague, Kate Waynick, and Kate is the retired Bishop of Indianapolis. And she and I have known each other since, I'm going to say, like 1993 or
Yeah,
so.
At least, I think.
When Kate was serving as the rector of All Saints in Pontiac. And I was, I think ordained 3 years at that point, and I was at All Saints in Chicago. We're here today at St. John's in Royal Oak because we were both testifying for a press conference for End Gun Violence Michigan. Specifically, we were looking at some of the bills that have been introduced in our state legislature to ensure that folks who have a domestic violence conviction would not be able to have guns. And so we've got our orange stoles here, our gun violence, anti-gun violence stoles, wearing orange so we can be seen. And Kate was testifying. So what do you think in terms of well, a little bit about, just tell us a tiny bit about your brother and why you were testifying here today.
Yeah.
I'm so sorry.
Coming to Michigan from Indianapolis to testify about something like this sounds a little unusual, but my brother and sister-in-law lived in Lenawee County.
Yeah, parishioners at Christ Church
Adrian. And back in February, my brother shot and killed his wife. They'd been married 42 years, but there had been a certain amount of trauma and abuse in that household. And years ago, almost 20 years ago, it was the sheriff's department who took out a protective order preventing my brother from going to the house, from having anything to do with his wife. And in addition to that, he's a felon. He has a diagnosis of bipolar syndrome. Yeah. So there's a lot going on there. But most of us remain convinced that had a gun not been readily accessible, that my sister-in-law would still be alive.
I think frequently folks will say, well, it's about mental illness. Right. And what we know, and you and I were talking about this earlier, we know that the United States has the same level of mental health illness as countries around the world. The difference is that we have guns. We have there's ready access to guns.
And so, my sister-in-law isn't dead because my brother is mentally ill. She's dead because he got a gun. Yeah. And it's the kind of traumatic event that has multiple victims. My sister-in-law is dead, but there are 2 grown daughters who have sleepless nights and nightmares, who have terrible self-doubt. Why, could I have done something to help Mom get out of that situation? Yeah. There are some grandchildren. They're just small children. Yeah. They can't be told right now exactly what happened to their Grammy, but the day will come when they'll need to know that, and then they will be traumatized by that. So it's the kind of issue that has, what, I've been thinking about it. It's kind of like the what did we call it? The smoking, the secondhand smoke.
Oh, right.
Trauma. Right. Smoking cigarettes is bad for you, but it's also bad for everybody else who's around you. Yeah. And having guns available when one person is shot and killed, there's secondary fallout. Yeah. All over the place for that.
And I think similarly, as this country was able to say that big tobacco
Right.
knew what was happening,
Right.
knew the causes, knew what the effect was, and still kept pushing it for the profits.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, you said just a bit ago.
Yeah. As soon as people start getting the facts, as soon as people start realizing what's actually happening for themselves and everybody around them, we've been able to pass laws that make public places free of secondhand smoke.
And when we find out the facts, when we understand the facts about irresponsible gun ownership.
Right.
Right.
Well, look how long it took us to be able to talk about alcohol.
Yeah.
Look how long it took us to be able to talk about HIV and AIDS and smoking.
Right.
It's one of those topics. Gun ownership,
Right.
it just freezes people,
Yeah.
hardens them into a position where it's hard to have kind of sane conversations about
Yeah.
all of it.
Yeah.
But as soon as we're able to look at all of that
Yep.
carefully and honestly, we're going to be able to do with guns what
Mhm.
we've been able to do with the
Seat belts.
tobacco and seat belts and sure, it's possible. We can do it.
Yeah, I think about the folks who are in the coalition with End Gun Violence Michigan, like Gifford's Gun Owners has
Mhm.
been an amazing partner and saying, yeah, we own
Mhm.
guns, we're responsible with them, we have the licenses, we are instructors,
Mhm.
and we want them stored safely. We want universal background check. We want extreme risk protection orders, all of which is passed in our state now. And looking at if someone has a domestic violence conviction, and to say not just a felony, it can be a misdemeanor, to also say you shouldn't have a gun. And I just am desperately hoping that we can bit by bit keep working on this, and for folks to understand our agency in living out our
Sure.
promises, our baptismal vows, people of faith. This is how it's not politics, it's people.
Yes, and part of how we accomplish that is by refusing to keep it a secret.
Yeah.
Domestic violence has for generations been this dirty secret that families weren't allowed to talk about. Partly because sometimes there were sexual aspects to
Right.
that. But my brother and I grew up in an abusive household.
Yeah.
And had I gone to school with bruises on my body, I mean, I did. If I were going to school today, looking the way I did as a kid, protective services would be called immediately. My father wouldn't have been allowed to get away with that. But we couldn't talk about it. It was a secret, and it's embarrassing. Somehow the victims of domestic violence have been made to feel like it's their fault. The abuser tells them, "You made me. You're the one who's causing all of this. I'm only drinking. I'm only losing my temper because of you." So it's been hard to talk about.
Yeah.
But the more we're able to talk with each other, the more people understand how many there are, how many of us there are,
Yeah.
how much mutual support there can be.
Right.
We can begin to talk about this the same way we began to talk about alcoholism and mental illness and other things that have been causing so much
Yeah.
dis-ease in
Yeah.
our society.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah.
Bringing things into the light. Little scripture, the truth will set us free.
Truth can set you free.
Yeah. I know that when I got the call from the warden at Christ Church, and I was like, oh my gosh. And then she called back and she said, "Bonnie, it's Kate Waynick's brother."
Mhm.
And I was like, holy crow. And I was like, I didn't know
Yeah.
I didn't know what to
There's-
do.
There's nothing you can say or do.
I didn't know it, and I was like, do I call? Do I just didn't, and I stopped, and I kind of held it, and then I thought, I think I called and left a message and said, hey, it's Bonnie. I heard about your brother. I was like,
Yeah.
if you want to talk, I'm around. And then I sent you a text because who knows if you're going to know what a random
That's
773
I
phone
was
number was.
Really glad you left the messages
Yeah.
because
Yeah.
because I often don't
Yeah.
respond to
Right.
calls from
Right, random number.
Random places,
So
yeah.
so I sent the text and kind of said the same thing, because I went with the notion that this is my colleague,
hmm
this is my friend. Something wretched has happened.
This is what we do
And-
as pastors. See, we're allowed to do that as pastors.
Right.
We're allowed to get a little bit pushy curious, you know, and say, is everything okay? Are you doing all right? Let me know if there's anything. So that's I think people are okay when pastors do that.
Yeah.
But it's still not easy for people to talk about.
Yeah.
There's such stigma and shame still attached
Yeah.
to domestic violence.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
it makes it a different kind of animal than kids living through a school shooting.
Yeah.
That's not anything anybody could blame them for.
Right.
You know, that's clearly something that's going
Right.
on with somebody
Right.
else.
And we don't blame people, but it's so secret because we're afraid we might get. And
Well, we don't know as children, and as a spouse.
And we're told by
and
an
a spouse,
abuser. Yeah.
Yeah. You know,
Yeah.
what you tell anybody about this, there's going to be
Yeah.
big trouble.
yeah. Wow. Well, thank you very, very much for coming and testifying. I'm so sorry,
Thank you.
and I am praying, and I am putting those prayers into action.
And I'm very grateful. Very grateful.
Thank you. Friends, if you have any issues with domestic violence, tell someone. You can get help, and you don't have to be afraid. We don't have to be afraid, and together we can pull. We can change things. We can make a difference.
And the responsible gun ownership and the groups that are working so hard for that are doing something that's really invaluable, because it's not ever going to be enough, but it's a great first step. If someone has been abusive and has shown a willingness to be hurtful to the people they live with, then we need to think seriously about whether they should have guns.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.